Welcome everybody to the Bringing Business to Society webinar hosted by BITC and delivered by Forster Communications. Just to introduce some of the functionality that you've got as part of this webinar. You can submit questions using the pane on the right hand side. We will also be using a polling function at different times within the webinar just to get your views on a couple of different questions. In the meantime, if you'd like to just keep your phones on mute, and we will field questions at certain times within the presentation when they get submitted through the pane. But without further ado, I will introduce Amanda and Peter to take you through the webinar today.
Hello, and thank you very much. So I'm Amanda.
And I'm Peter.
What we're going to do is talk you through some slides, and as Tom has said, let you know when some votes, and do please send questions through as you have them. We'll answer them at some different points throughout the presentation. This research is based on the premise that we believe that businesses and the resources and ideas and energy within them are absolutely key to creating a strong, safe and fair society. And what we did last year was conduct 3 different sets of research, one with business leaders, one with the UK public, and one with charity fundraisers. And what we want to talk you through today is some of the key findings and what we believe the implications and opportunities are for businesses. As we've already said, votes and questions welcome throughout. The first key finding insight is the level of expectation for business involvement in societal issues is high. It's particularly high from the public and consumers, and it is also high from business leaders, although as we'll explore, not across all issues. What we've seen when you ask the questions about whether businesses should be involved in tackling climate change, which is the columns on the left, there is broad agreement that they should be. The orange is the consumers, the brown is the business leaders, and the consumers are saying that 70% say that they should be involved in climate change, and 63% that they should be involved in tackling social equality. That is, particularly around social equality, significantly higher than the business leaders. When you actually start to dig into that and have a look at what issues are important, it's perhaps not surprising, but helps see that employment is absolutely the priority that both businesses and consumers think that businesses should help with. So answering the question around helping people back into employment, 87% of consumers and 80% of business leaders said this was key. It's what they should be doing. They should also broadly agreed on supporting local communities and tackling environmental issues. And I think this is really exciting. This is good. There's commonality in there, and obviously a huge license around employability. When you start to ask a bit more specifically about some of the perhaps grittier and tougher social issue areas, you start to see expectations really divulging. You get many more hopes from the consumers than you do from the business leaders. If you look at homelessness, which is the column towards the right-hand side of the chart, you've got 45% of the public saying that businesses should be helping just to address homelessness, and only 25% of business leaders. Something like mental health, slightly closer together, which is good. We know that there's been masses of work on that as an issue, destigmatizing it around that area, so that is closer together. But all those issues are seen less as a business responsibility than as consumer desire for their help. When you start to then look at age within it, you can see again that people who are under 35 years old have significantly higher expectations for business involvement than those who are over 55. So if you start to look at the differences in consumers, with young people being the orange bars and older people being the brown bars, you'll see across every single issue, younger people want businesses to do more than older people. we haven't picked into the reasons of why, and we could, but actually this broadly tallies with a lot of the other research that's been going on around millennials and Gen Z, etc., in that hope of side of things.
It also indicates the direction of travel around consumer attitudes towards social change amongst businesses. Generationally, it's quite clear that consumers are expecting more from businesses in terms of their commitment to social change. Even though the figures for the older generations are still relatively high, it's quite clear that those expectations are much higher for the under 35s.
What's interesting as well is when you ask the business leaders, there is the same split between young business leaders and older business leaders, with the younger leaders wanting to do more or believing that businesses should do more. There's definitely a tally between the younger and older, whatever their role as public or consumer or leader. So, what does this mean? In addition to being a good employer, businesses are now being expected to help people back into employment. There's obviously been vast conversations over the last few years around apprenticeships and that side of things. We've seen a lot of even political levers helping that. But more than that, we've also seen business leaders quite often reaching out and starting to help more vulnerable employees. And there are, I'm sure we can all name examples of people working with homeless people and as such to get in. That's still very much a leadership at the moment, but broadly, being businesses are expected to help. So whilst business leaders do broadly believe that business should be involved in tackling issues, we're not necessarily seeing it moving into concrete action, and that would be interesting to explore and hear your views about whether you think enough is happening. Ultimately, we think that businesses are going to be increasingly expected to help tackle the tough social issues that employees, customers, and policymakers are being concerned about. And this obviously then has implications for your organisations and the role that's being expected to be played.
And you could surmise from the data we've shown you so far that businesses are already doing a lot in an area of comfort, that which is closest to them as a business and which has the most obvious benefit for them as an employer, which would be around helping people back into employment. I suppose the bigger challenge is on tackling those tougher, slightly more ethereal issues like homelessness, mental health issues, the environment, where the close relationship between business performance and ability to operate isn't quite as strong as the relationship would be around employment.
So what we thought we'd like to do now is get your views on a vote. It is a simple yes/no answer. But do you think it's right for consumers to expect businesses to step beyond employment and employability to look at broader social issues? Polls now open, so please vote yes, you think it's right, or no, you don't think it's right. And we'll have a little look at the opinions as that comes in over the next few minutes. So we'd asked some more questions around involvement, and it's important to see that yes, there is a better business movement. We've all seen examples, whether it's B Corp, whether it's the emergence of CICs and social enterprises, whether it's the work obviously that BITC is doing in driving sustainable businesses and corporate responsibility. The better business movement is growing, which is exciting, but there is a significant way to go. And if you look at the numbers of business leaders who are involved or want to be involved in societal issues, unfortunately, a significant number still think that they don't have a role in helping society. So 53% agreed they should be doing more to tackle social issues. 56% agreed they should be doing part of the solution to tackling climate change. But only 45, so less than half, agree they should be part of the solution to tackling social equality. I think it's very easy sometimes that we're all obviously involved in this, we're interested in it, we're working at the heart of it, but it's quite easy to forget that actually at least half, if not you could say a majority of people aren't thinking about it, and that represents a huge wasted potential in terms of skills and resources in terms of tackling social issues.
It would also indicate that quite a significant minority of business leaders don't feel that the simple operation of their business does anything to tackle some of these issues, that they perhaps see it as separate from and distinct from their everyday business practice.
What we found really interesting was the difference in different industry sectors and their opinions about what they should, what or how they should get involved in different issues. So we asked we asked different industry sectors whether they should do more to help society, and it ranged from 80% at the top end in the IT telecom side of things, down to the 40% for construction, retail, education, manufacturing, and the catch-all of other. So a big span of involvement recommendations according to the type of industries that they were in. This continues when you start to look at different issues. So if you take something like homelessness, which we remember from earlier was particularly polarised between the consumers and the business leaders, and then you ask the business leaders of the different industry sectors whether they should get involved in tackling homelessness, it goes from 48% in medical and health services, who I guess see the implications of homelessness very directly in the type of work that they're doing, down to 7% for manufacturing and education, and that's obviously very little.
It's particularly interesting that only 9% of real estate businesses feel they should be doing something to tackle homelessness, which is pretty shocking when you consider the business that they work within. I'm not sure whether that's an outrider, but it is certainly lower than we were expecting in the poll.
When you pick up another area like playing a role in improving the care for older people, again, it's hugely varied. From 2 in the 50%, medical and health and IT telecoms, right down again to 9% for real estate, which, as Peter's just intimated, again, they're people who might well be involved in housing solutions and that side of things, and people in later life. So again, a huge range in that area. And I think this is really interesting because you've got an aging population. Everybody is fully aware of that. And why aren't more businesses seeing that as an opportunity for them? There's a huge leadership potential here. And it's about not only helping older people, but building markets and expertise and experience in that area. So I would hope that we would quite quickly see this graph change if we tracked it.
It's also about, I think, leadership too, because the poll significantly was done before the John Lewis Christmas campaign this year, which focused very much on loneliness. I think we might see a different result if we were to conduct the same question now.
In fact, moving on to loneliness, our survey showed that less than 42% of leaders in any business feel that they should help prevent loneliness. So that is, as Peter says, that it could be different, it could change, and it shows again that partnerships like the Co-op and British Red Cross is particularly brave and strong in this area and going in to show about how to create that. So you can see from here that there are issues that people care about, that consumers care about, and I would imagine that a lot of employees care about, but they are currently not being considered as a priority for businesses. So what are the challenges and implications around that? Well, as we said, less than half of the business leaders think they should be part of the solution to tackling social inequality, which is an issue if you look at it that way. Maybe we should also look at it as a massive opportunity, because if we can convince them, let's see how much more we could unlock to help things. We have to have a clear business case that's directly linked to the performance of the business if we're going to do that. This can't just be seen about being do-good and nice to do. It's got to be seen as important to the business side of things. And I would argue that we need to stop being worried talking about sales, marketing, long-term business side of things, and really enable people to link those more together. And ultimately move from a business culture that sees social change as exterior to their main purpose, i.e. something in a separate department or a much more passive relationship, to something that's absolutely core to their business success.
It's interesting, anecdotally, having spoken to a very senior person in the city, the phrase they used when I challenged them on that issue of social change being core to their business purpose was the focus for their clients on sticking to their knitting. in that they felt the desire to ensure shareholder value was key for any business to be sustainable, and couldn't be convinced that perhaps shareholder value was also key to establishing a sustainable business through social change. So there's work to do in terms of some of the stakeholders around this as an issue to convince them that it is central to business success and a core part of it.
So we're going to have another vote, and I thought interestingly you would like to know the results of the last vote. So that before we do that, so the last vote was, do you think it's right for consumers to expect businesses to step beyond employment to broader social issues? And the result was 100% yes, you do, which is fantastic, because the next one,
just on that is almost North Korean in terms of democratic response to it, and it is a very self-selecting group, but I think the key thing is that it fits very well into what we're about to ask you next.
Because the next one is, do progressive businesses, which I think therefore are probably yourselves, have a social obligation to help and encourage other businesses to get involved? We've said that we've got leaders who are doing some fantastic work, but we've also got 50% approximately of businesses who aren't doing anything. Is this again another opportunity where the leaders can help those who currently aren't doing anything to get involved?
And we're a B Corp, which we mentioned earlier, which some of you may know, is an attempt to create a movement of businesses who do put social change on the same level as financial performance. And part of being a B Corp is about proselytizing and going out and encouraging others to do exactly the same. Because we also recognise that B Corp is good for business for us to be part of that movement. It will help us with our own work.
So, keep voting, that's great. We can see them coming in, and we'll just...
We've just closed the vote actually, because you've all voted.
Okay.
Sorry, so I'll just share the results with you. And 92% voted yes, a mere 8% no.
Okay, so that's interesting. And I'd be, if there's opportunities to put some questions or comments through on the question thing, it'd be quite interesting to explore what your feedback on that question was, and particularly from the people who don't think they should, and why not, and those who might particularly feel strongly that it is. So we can perhaps pick that back up in a moment. So the third section of research that we want to talk about is more around the actual corporate-charity relationships. And we, having looked at the results and also from the work that we're doing, we very much feel that there's a huge opportunity for corporate-charity relationships to evolve in order to provide a greater value for business and society. So we asked different consumers what they thought about businesses working with charities, and there was really very strong support for getting involved with charity side of things, and very strong support for it being a very backing the business case for businesses getting involved, particularly amongst the younger people. So 64% of consumers felt that businesses should work more with charities. 67% of 18 to 24-year-olds said that they would be more likely to give their custom to businesses who had a strong stance on social and environmental issues. And 62% of this cohort was 25 to 34-year-olds said they'd be more likely to buy a product or service if it had an official endorsement. So I think that whole, you're starting to build in there very much a business case for involvement. But interestingly, when we talk to charities about their relationships with different businesses and what they thought about it, they are, not surprisingly, pretty discerning about who they want to work with. 69% of charities have turned down a partnership with a brand, and they gave a range of reasons as to why, from being a risk of a negative impact on their charity brand, through to a lack of flexibility in the way in which that brand wanted to work with a charity. So we can see, if you like, both sides of the partnership growing up around this. It's got to be a win-win for both, and trust being absolutely at the core.
And what's interesting about that result is considering some of the recent critical coverage of charity corporate partnerships like Age UK and E.ON, There's probably a large number of businesses who are equally as discerning about which charities they'll now go with because of the reputational risk for those businesses. Where previously most of that reputational risk was one way, the increasingly critical attention of the voluntary sector means that businesses are going to have to think a bit more about the reputational risk for them partnering with different causes and issues at the same time.
Definitely, and I think you'll all have seen the stuff in the paper today around Charity Commission and on that topic of corporate charity partnerships. What we wanted to do was to explore the nature of the relationships that charities have with businesses, and what we found was very much that the business-charity relationships continue to be dominated by fundraising. 69% of charity leaders said that the key requirement from a corporate partner is how much money can be raised. And whilst that might not sound particularly surprising, I think as we keep talking for a few minutes, dig into that as whether that is potentially a lost opportunity. 27% say they consider what business expertise can be offered as a key part of the partnership, and only 4% consider what business staff time can be offered. And if you think about linking into that in terms of the expertise that sits into many of the staff expertise, that's potentially a huge skill gap that's not there.
And it's perhaps not surprising to get those results because most business charity partnerships are instigated by the fundraising teams within charities. So their core function and purpose is to support their fundraising activity. It's not worrying that only 4% would consider business staff time, but certainly anecdotally when you talk to fundraisers, they do talk disparagingly sometimes about getting different walls painted in schools as a way of encouraging employee volunteering. And it's really because they're after the bigger prize of fundraising income, when if they considered more strategically what those employees could offer to them in a more grown-up partnership, then perhaps the partnership would have more legs and sustainability on both sides.
We wanted to find out from the charities about what they found easy and also difficult about working with businesses. And actually 80% said that they found it was very hard to get genuine and sustained buy-in from senior teams in their charity partners. Obviously, we're advocating the desire of long-term integrated partnership side of things, and you absolutely can't get that unless there's some element of buy-in. 69% saying that it's about making sure you both achieve your objectives, being the greatest challenge, and 50% saying motivating the corporate staff to get behind things. And that's obviously where strong communications and also a really clear rationale as to why, and that it really unites around people's interests and quite often skill areas. I think a key phrase that needs to be used is the phrase around problem solving and how together things can come together around that. So in terms of challenges and implications, I mean, perhaps not surprising, but I think really important to say that the majority of business charity partnerships continue to be predicated on fundraising alone, which means that the skills, experience and resources are not maximised by a fundraising first model. Obviously, money is great and can do one thing, and that's good, but it's not doing necessarily everything that a partnership really could. And that partnership, the starting point, I think, probably needs to be this idea of a shared problem that both parties can contribute to solving, rather than a fixed service that just needs money. So this is not just change. I think this is probably quite a lot how quite a lot of businesses can start approaching things, but also it's a new way of charities approaching a partnership too, because sometimes it's going into it without a fixed idea of what you want to deliver on the ground, but a genuine idea about what that there might need to be systems change in order to get the best results that's there. So we've got our third and final vote coming up, which is that the fundraising first model for business and charity relationship limits their impact and the opportunity for innovation and problem solving. If you think that's correct, please vote yes, and if you think it's incorrect, please vote no.
Ooh. I'm afraid the polling seems to have gone down, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, everybody.
Or maybe if you have strong views, you can send in a question and we'll have a look at it.
Or tweet us.
Or tweet us. So that was our key approach to the business and society side of things. We have there's a bigger and longer report, which if you would be interested, please email us and we're happy to send it to you. And I think what we would like to do is just have a look at any questions or comments and explore those in more detail.
Great. We have a sort of statement here, a comment here from Nikki Della Porta. Says the fundraising first model could work if linked to beneficial content and learning outcomes. That's a comment there from Nikki.
Yeah, I think we'd agree with that. It's just from our perspective, the fundraising first model, if it dominates, just seems like a missed opportunity for creating more mature business charity partnerships. Certainly, fundraising is really important because it's often what employees are looking to do when they're looking to support a charitable cause, and it's often one of the key priorities for the voluntary sector partner involved in it all. But from our perspective, it's missing the bigger opportunity. That fundraising income can come through a deepening relationship, but actually maximizing the skills and experience of the business and the charity around some of these really quite profound social issues is a bigger prize, and we just feel that there isn't enough going on in terms of best practice around that area to really create a movement or momentum around it.
I agree, yeah.
Okay. Any further questions? Please do type away if you have any questions or observations on what you've heard. Give it a couple of minutes for people to give people time to type. It's worth noting that yes, we will send the research report round. After this, there will also be a recording of the webinar available along with the slides. I know we had a slight technical difficulty when the poll stayed on for a little bit longer. You might have missed just a couple of the slides that Amanda was voicing over, but we'll make sure that you have that content. We have a question here from Emily. Can you tell us about the sample of this research?
Yes, absolutely. So we spoke to 729 business leaders, and that was done through YouGov, and 2,040 members of the UK public, which was done through Populous, and it was 27 in-depth charity fundraiser interviews.
So with YouGov and Populous, both of those were representative samples. So we had a representative sample of large, medium, and SME businesses on the business leaders front, and then the UK public was 16 plus, and again representative both geographically and by age profile.
Great. And a question here from Robert: are there any examples of best practice from the sector we can learn from?
I think if you go back to what we were talking about, employability plus, I think there is some really interesting work that's been done by PwC, for example, in terms of stretching their employability program and their apprentices and things like that to actually working with homeless people, and they've done that by setting up their brigade restaurant and surrounding social enterprise around that, and that's directly picking up a real social need and tackling it in partnership, and Brigade then is creating a restaurant which is outside their office and that they then use for staff entertainment and client entertainment and for getting involved there. And I think that's a win-win all round as a very good example. I think KPMG is doing something similar with its Spring Cafe, and they're both great looking at how you've taken that and moved it and stretched it forwards.
And then Lloyds Bank have an excellent initiative around community connectors, where they identify staff within regional areas who they match up to the voluntary community sector in those areas, and try and match business skills and businesses within those areas with charities that have a need. So they're using their core business skills as a community retail bank, and rather than just offering their own staff to provide their business skills for it, they're going beyond that and trying to broker relationships on the ground between businesses and community organisations, which again is a good example of going beyond just a straightforward corporate charity partnership. It's much more for them about building capacity within both sectors.
We have another question here from Zoe. Everyone is saying that there is bottom line value of businesses supporting society, community, etc. Do you think there has been change / improvement over the last 10 years?
I think the case is growing, and I think there are more enlightened organisations, and I think there is definitely, as we said, a growing, what we loosely call a better business movement, because of introduction of things like B Corp as alternative ways around that. I think what's the most exciting area is that people are getting much braver about stating the link between their desire to build a sustainable, profitable business, and profit isn't a dirty word, and linking that into work that you're doing in social change. And I think that's absolutely got to continue. So it's okay to say that you're moving into an area because you believe that it's got a future market for you. If you're working in a best practice way for employees and suppliers and also wider society, that's absolutely fine. So that, I think, is changing, but it's very easy, I think, for the few of us that are deeply involved in it to forget that it's not necessarily happening everywhere, and what we need to do is help encourage and make it easy for more businesses to get involved, and particularly for businesses of all sizes, and how you can sort of take it from the big organisations who might have the skills and resources into medium and particularly smaller organisations, and show the value that they're creating.
And one question here from Alex. The businesses mentioned are large organisations, KPMG or PwC, for example. What about smaller organisations?
Well, so that's yes, exactly. As I just said, I think that is definitely the next step, and as their key employers across the UK, it's really critical. You can't. This is where things need to get, in a way, much more imaginative, because this isn't about just giving lots of money or something like that, because they haven't got those sorts of skills and resources, but they have got probably fantastic contacts and opportunities around. And I think it's where, if, for example, a plumbing type business is going into homes and working with people, then they're much more likely to be a first stage alert if someone's got other problems or are making stuff they're going. But I think there's huge opportunity, and what the challenge now is to be able to show the impact that can be made by doing small things rather than just big charity checks or whatever it may be.
And in terms of small businesses, we've worked with a number of small businesses who have had social change front and centre in what they do. Many of those are becoming B Corps, but some good examples are people like Neil's Yard, who've always worked hard in terms of their own sustainability and supply chain around their ingredients and products, but are increasingly also looking at social justice issues outside of things like fair trade. There's a number of smaller businesses, particularly on sustainability, or retail-focused people like Leon and others, who've made social change a key plank of who they are as a business and part of the consumer promise that they make. I think where smaller businesses we see less of are those B2B businesses or professional services businesses who dominate at the larger level because they might have a sophisticated CSR program. Because I think it's harder for B2B businesses who are small to identify the change that they can make, and actually to persuade their stakeholders, their clients as business customers, that this is of value. And that's the area that we'd like to see grow, really, because particularly in the UK, those small to medium-sized enterprises are absolutely the engine of our economy. So while we've got a lot happening at the higher end, there's a lot more work to be done to convince small business owners that this is crucial to their ability to grow and succeed. And just going back to the point about whether we've proved the case for the importance of this in terms of business performance, I don't think anybody's actually quite proved the case. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence around it. But the more large, medium and small businesses who commit to it, the greater sense we'll have of a movement.
And a question here from Sam. Did you measure how many of the businesses within the sample were actually involved in employment initiatives, not just expressing a desire to be involved?
There is a question. I haven't got it in front of me now, there's one question in the full survey which looks at the difference between recognising the communications opportunities and reputation opportunities of getting involved and the actual desire to get involved. So there is some there. If you email us, we can send you the full report and you can have a look at that.
But there is no specific data within there around those who are actively involved in employment initiatives. It was attitudinal.
Okay, thank you. Comment and question from Steve here. There is a requirement for learning and development teams to be more involved in volunteering, so that individual T&D needs are served through working with charities. Can BITC, or presumably others, work more closely with CIPD to drive this message down through people directors?
I think that's a really key thing, and we're seeing that through quite a lot of our clients as well. And it also shifts with an interest in moving from sort of, if you like, more brawn-based volunteering. Everyone talks about painting the wall, but like painting a wall, to actually using the skills and capability within organisations. So, for example, running interviews with children in terms of job preparation, or a trustee or a governor and that side of things. So I agree. I think that's a huge opportunity. I think that sort of move will help to unlock just how you use the skills and the opportunities. So the more joined up there's be, that was a good point.
Rebecca here asks, where can more resources be found about B Corps?
There is a B Corps website, but if you want to email us, we can put you in touch with the UK B Corps team. So very happy to do that.
Okay. Anna asks, what do you think lies behind the 80% of charities feeling that senior business teams aren't genuinely bought into a partnership? Is there a perception communication issue? And if so, what can be done about it?
I don't know what lies behind it, but I suspect it might be around the ability for charities to have longer term relationships and to be able to move from a sort of a more hands-off to an actually more involved discussion. And I think that's where it's important that we're seeing it change slightly as CSR teams or community teams become less siloed in organisations and are moving closer to the board. But that's where that within a business is needs to become more joined up around that.
It's also perhaps reflective of where the relationship tend to be initiated between charities and corporates. Often some of the fundraising-led partnerships are because there's a marketing link, so there's a cause marketing opportunity, and the charities don't necessarily get the opportunity to go beyond that marketing manager or marketing lead to the senior leadership team. And so there's potentially a disconnect there between the ambition that the charity might have and even the corporate might have, and where the communication and agreement on an initiative takes place.
Thank you. Well, that looks like all the questions we have at the moment. As we said, there are both Amanda and Peter's email addresses there on screen at the moment, so do email them or email through to the BITC team if you do have any further questions. We will be sending a follow-up email on the back of this with the headlines, findings, and if you would like a full copy of the report, then please do email the Forster team. But all that remains to do is a big thank you to both Peter and Amanda for their time today. It's been really, really fascinating, and I'm sure everybody found that useful.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.